All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is John Wayne. Next lesson, we are going to cover when and how does FEMA buy from small businesses. FEMA is a special agency. FEMA is what I call a living agency. FEMA grows and changes with every new disaster. We, as a government, as a people, we learn from each disaster. We learn from the mistakes that we've made, and we try and move forward and provide better disaster recovery assistance in the future based on learning from prior incidents. FEMA stands for Federal Emergency Management Agency, and they do buy from small businesses. FEMA buys from everyone. I've heard both purchasing agents and prime contractors say FEMA writes blank checks. To do business with FEMA, there's several ways. Obviously, if you're registered in SAM and you're registered in the Disaster Recovery Directory in SAM, FEMA can find you and reach out to you if they want to buy from you. But just being registered does not guarantee you're going to win FEMA contracts. FEMA is also what I call a wrong place, right time agency, meaning if you happen to be in an area where there's a disaster, the wrong place at the right time, i.e., and FEMA comes to you and says, we need you, you're in. They're going to hire you. They're going to pay you whatever you want to take care of the work that needs to be done. If you remember during Katrina, there was a lot of people that were stuck on a bridge for a couple of 3 or 4 days. And they were saying our government doesn't care about us and they left us for dead. That's not true. At the time, FEMA would put most contracts out for bid. During an emergency situation, FEMA reaches out to several contractors to get a quote. It could take a day to get a quote from several contractors, and a day for FEMA to compare those quotes and choose a vendor, and a day for that vendor to be awarded and to pack up their equipment and vehicles and employees and gas and lunches and food and what have you, and it could take another day or two to physically drive to the location where the disaster is. So of course that's 4 or 5 days that it could take to fulfill a disaster response. So that's why a lot of what FEMA does now, they do as a simplified acquisition, where it's not put out for bid. They don't require the rule of 2 to get a second quote. They can just hire you and write you a check when they're done. Another way to get into FEMA, this is one of my best kept secrets, guys, and I'm going to share it with you. Another way to get into FEMA is to get in with your local government or your city or county or parish or state government disaster recovery divisions. Guys, this is one of my best kept secrets. A lot of people don't realize that each government agency has its own disaster recovery division. We'll use Katrina again as an example. When the levee broke in Louisiana during Hurricane Katrina, the parish of New Orleans was obviously the first to declare a disaster. If you're working in your office as a government employee and all of a sudden the office is flooded with 3 feet of water, you're declaring a disaster. The state of Louisiana followed suit shortly after, and the state declared a disaster. The United States government had to send in people to examine the damage, and it took a day or so before FEMA actually declared a disaster. Therefore, if your local or city or county government or parish government declares a disaster and you are registered with them and they hire you and you're working when the state comes in and takes over, the state is most likely going to hire you as well. Once FEMA comes in to take over from the state and you were working for the city and the county and the state, FEMA will most likely hire you because you're already working for the state, city, county, and the parish. So registering with your local city, county, state, and parish government disaster recovery divisions is a great way to get in the door with FEMA. FEMA also puts contracts out for bid. You will in fact find some contracts in APP for FEMA that are out for bid ahead of time, or they're out for bid in anticipation of another disaster, or there's also contracts that are put out for bid where FEMA prepares to have supplies and materials in certain places ahead of time. A lot of people don't know this, but our country has reserves. Our country keeps reserves of grain. They keep reserves of water. They keep reserves of many perishable foods that, if not used each year, are actually thrown away and replenished each year. So FEMA does put some contracts out for bid ahead of time or anticipation of a future disaster.